Hi guys, it's Carl O'Rourke from Metal Wani, and I'm stoked to be sitting here with the man who really needs no introduction. He's one of the most legendary drummers of our time. It is, of course, Mr. Mike Portnoy. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I do need an introduction though, because it's only audio, so they can't see who you're sitting here with. So
don't worry, I'll put it in the tagline. I'll make sure.
Oh, that's right. I guess usually it says that when. I'm just kidding. Thank you, man.
No problem. So, how is the road treating you so far?
It's been great. We've been out since February. And we did North America, we did South America, and now here we are on our European and UK run, and it's been great. We've done a lot of festivals while over here, and it's been really cool, man. It's an amazing band, and just each and every night on stage, you could really feel the energy and the awe. You know, it's pretty insane.
Sure, man. We're very excited to have you here in Dublin, Ireland. This is a big one for us. So thank you for.
It's been a while. Here. I don't think I've been here since I was here with Avenged Sevenfold in 2010. So it's been
a while.
It's been almost 8 years now since I've been here. So it's good to be back.
So Sons of Apollo. Stellar lineup, there's no question there, and it's probably fair to speculate that a couple of the many things the band all have in common are rigorous schedules and your workaholic nature. And when you consider all that and putting this band together, writing a record, sending it out on the road, what is the genesis of it? How did the stars have to align for Sons of Apollo to be here today?
Well, it took years for the stars to align, because the embryo of this began when me and Derek and Billy were doing PSMS along with Tony McAlpine, and I think that was 2011 or 12, so that was 6-7 years ago. And that was just a fun little project, playing shows, and that was pretty much the extent of it. And ever since then, Derek kept trying to egg me on to do something full time. So it took years to be able to get to this point and actually put together a full time band and add a vocalist and bring Bumblefoot in. So it took a while. It wasn't only scheduling for everybody. It was just I was already juggling so many bands.
Of course.
It's hard to, find time for everything. But finally, when Winery Dogs was taking a break and Twisted Sister was finishing up, that knocked 2 bands off of my plate, and the Shattered Fortress, commitment was done, so that was off my plate. So it opened up the schedule a bit to start something new, and here we are.
Very cool. And what you started is one hell of a supergroup. And when it comes to supergroups, there are some, there can be connotations attached with, a project that has an end date in mind or just a fun outlet, while other artists take it, they're like, no, this is a very serious, very real project for us. So I'm wondering, for you, with a man who juggles so many different things, how in that respect do you view Sons of Apollo?
Well, we have full intentions to, be as full-time as we can be with something like this. We all obviously still have other things. Billy's still in Mr. Big, Derek's still in Black Country Communion, Jeff still does T.S.O, and I still have Neil Morris, Flying Colors, Transatlantic Metal Allegiance, and Winery Dogs. So we all have other things. Sure. But our intention is to be as full-time as we can. That we're all focused on it this year, and we've carved out the majority of 2018 just focusing on this. And then once we get through this tour, we have full intentions to reconvene and start a second album and do it all over. Yeah, so that's what we're all hoping for. But a lot of times, the true destiny is in the hands of the fans. That always determines how long and how far you could take it. Whether people buy the albums, whether people come buy tickets to the shows. We're all 50, 60 years old in this band, and we've all been doing this for 25 plus years. So, you got to go where the business is. We're not kids that can just get in a van and play, to 100 people a night. So, sure. As long as people still support this, then we'll keep doing it.
Fantastic. Now, on paper, Sons of Apollo, it could look like a progressive metal band. But in truth, when you listen to Psychotic Symphony, there are certainly elements of that, but there's actually a very hard rock aura that surrounds you, band, especially vocally. And I'm wondering, would you agree with this assessment? Would it be fair to say?
I absolutely agree with that. On paper, the intention was to be like a progressive metal band. When Derek and I were picturing this and putting it together, that was kind of the direction we were assuming we'd end up in. And once we started playing especially with Ron and with Jeff, it ended up going to many, many different places. I think Bumblefoot gives it a more heavier edge, hard rock edge, brings in that whole kind of Van Halen, Guns N' Roses kind of thing. Plus he's got the detuned fretless guitar, which creates these crazy heavy riffs. And then Jeff's voice brought a whole kind of smooth AOR aspect to it, like he comes from the background of singers like Lou Gramm and Steve Perry and Steve Walsh. So suddenly, between his voice and Bumblefoot's guitar, I think we ended up becoming more of a hard rock band, more in the vein of like Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. I mean, it still has those prog elements.
Sure.
Like a song like Labyrinth and God of the Sun, those are kind of progressive epics. But really, if you listen to the rest of the album or you come see the live show, it's really a hard rock band with just chops, with shredding musical abilities.
And forgive me if I'm mistaken, but you did say that Van Halen was the one very, everybody's influence.
Right, that's definitely the common ground in this band.
Cool.
And you could hear it all throughout the show. Our intro tape is Intruder, our outro tape is Happy Trails. Sometimes, venue permitting, we'll do And the Cradle Will Rock in the encore. Derek plays Spanish Fly in his keyboard solo. So yeah, there's Van Halen sprinkled all throughout the DNA of this band.
Awesome. And speaking of the DNA of this band, and you were talking there about looking to regroup and make a second record. Obviously you started off as progressive with the intention of being progressive. It became hard rock. Going forward, is it too early to say what other musical dimensions you might explore? Have you any intention of that so far?
I would anticipate it's gonna continue in the same direction as the first album. Amazing. Because that's what came out.
Sure.
That's what happens when you put the five of us together. What came out was Psychotic Symphony. So I would assume with the second record the general style will be the same, but I think it'll be even better because now we have this chemistry, that being touring all year long together. It's the same with any band I've done, whether it be Winery Dogs or Flying Colors or Transatlantic.
Sure.
Anytime you do a first album, it's kind of an experiment and you're just getting to know each other. But then you put out the first album, you go on tour, you get to know each other, and then usually the second album is when you're even more of a cohesive band because you've spent all that time together.
Of course. One of the things I want to talk to you about just while we're on, or talking about you and your music, is you used to do a lot of drum clinics, even at your most busy.
Right.
It's been a while since we've seen them. Do you ever intend to do them again?
No, I made a conscious decision to stop them back in 2003, so it's been 15 years now.
Yeah.
I did them all throughout the 90s and the first couple of years of the 2000s. I was doing like hundreds of them all around the world. I hit every continent and just did hundreds of them, and I think it just burnt me out. Yeah, it was great for developing my own name outside of Dream Theater.
Of course.
But at this point in my life, it's not really what interests me. If I have some spare time, I'd rather make an album with somebody or go do a tour with somebody. It's more about making music and collaborating rather than playing by myself and doing drum solos. Even live in the show tonight, I'm the only one in the band that doesn't do a solo.
Really?
And that's by choice. I'm just kind of bored with them.
Fair enough. That's more than fair. And when you speak there of metal, Allegiance, Winery Dogs, and so on, with Sons of Apollo, do you get to scratch a very different itch that you didn't get to in those other bands? Do you get to do something else?
Yeah, every one of the things I do are definitely different from each other. And they're all very different from what I used to do in Dream Theater. That was kind of my intent once I left the band, is I wanted to, explore all these other avenues. Metal Allegiance is my thrash side. I'm playing with all the guys from Slayer and Exodus and Testament and Megadeth and Pantera. That's like my thrash side. Then I got to scratch my old school classic metal itch by touring with Twisted Sister for a couple of years. Then, Winery Dogs is more of a classic rock thing in the vein of like Cream and Hendrix and Grand Funk and Zeppelin and stuff like that. Transatlantic and the Neil Morse Band are more traditional prog, in the vein of Yes and Genesis and Crimson and stuff. Flying Colors is more like alternative pop in the world of like Muse and Radiohead and Coldplay or whatever. Each and every one of these is something different, and the same with Sons of Apollo. Sons of Apollo was designed for me and Derek to reunite and do something we thought was going to be in the vein of Dream Theater, but it ended up going, someplace entirely different. So each and every one of these things for me is scratching a different musical itch. That's because I'm such a music fan. I love so many different things. I love everything from U2 to Sepultura that I want to have all of those outlets in my career.
Of course. Man, if you'd be so kind, I'd love to ask you a question and get your take on the current state of rock and metal, because I've spoken to a lot of artists about this, and some are very confident about it, others are concerned, but the general feeling seems to be that there's no huge forward thinkers. A lot of it's a very rehashed or recycled thing that's already been done. So I'm wondering if you agree with it. Do you think that the current culture of rock and metal is in a state of retromania and it's kind of addicted to its own past?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I believe that music is still continuing to grow and blossom and go so many new and exciting places. Even 50 years later, I mean, the Beatles kicked it off back 50-something years ago, and they set the tone, and every couple of years you'll have something new that comes around. Then came Pink Floyd, then came the punk rock scene and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, and then came the prog world. Every couple of years something new will blossom, and I think it's no different today. I still am inspired by new bands. I'll still hear a band like Code Orange or whatever that just kind of like inspires me. Or bands like Between the Buried and Me that are taking progressive extreme music to new places. I think music is better than ever. I just think the music scene is at its worst state ever. Because obviously record sales are not only down, they pretty much don't even exist anymore. Everybody just listens to Spotify for free, and so the industry's crumbling. The labels are closing and retailers are closing. So in that respect, the business end is at its lowest point. But musically and creatively, I still believe there's a lot of blooming artists with integrity out there.
That's what I love about you as well, is that you're very, very connected to musicians now. I know you do your lists every year as well, which I love reading. Maybe for lack of a better phrase, but is there anybody you're listening to or you kind of foresee as the future torchbearers for rock and metal?
I wish I had my phone on me. If I had my phone on me, I could look at what's come out this year. Like as far as new bands, I mean, well, it's interesting because some of the new bands that are really coming up are indeed leaning on the past, like you said. Like Greta Van Fleet obviously is just so tied in with the Zeppelin thing and the retro thing. But in a way, I think that's cool. I think it's cool that kind of that classic sound could still be relevant 50 years later. And I like that they're doing it. I know a lot of people, they get a lot of criticism for it as well. There's another young band called the Lemon Twigs who I really like, and they're kind of more in the power pop 60s vein of like Badfinger and Beatles and Beach Boys, so I dig them. But as far as new bands doing new sounds and new things, I mean, the prog world always creates creative bands.
Absolutely.
I mean, Caligula's Horse I think is really cool. I think Leprous is really cool. Obviously Haken, I've taken them under my wing through the years. I mean, I posted, I think just about a month ago, if you look at my Facebook or Instagram, I posted 3 brand new bands that I got turned on to that blew me away. One was We Came From Space, which is Bill Hubauer from the Neil Morse Band. Another was this band 633 from France that was very much like Mr. Bungle-esque, very strange and quirky. And who else? There was a band called Dilemma from the Netherlands that was kind of poppy and proggy. So if you read my list, you follow me on social media, I'll constantly talk about bands that catch my ear and inspire me, and I'm always listening to new music.
Awesome, man. And when we talk about the greats and we're talking about those larger than life personalities, a prime example of this is of course Vinnie Paul, who I know had a huge influence and impact on you. And I was wondering, what did you learn from Vinnie as a drummer or even as a person that you carry through with you today and through your career?
Well, Vinnie was a friend of mine for a long time. We became friends right around when they put out Cowboys from Hell and we put out Images and Words. We were both signed to Atco at the same time, so we're dealing with a lot of the same people. And I became good friends with not only Vinnie, but all 4 of the guys in the band. And, to this day, remain good friends with all of them. Yeah, but when Vinnie came on the scene in terms of his drumming, I think they were the perfect band that was needed in the metal world around 91, 92, because pretty much the big four were kind of knocked out of style by grunge. Like Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, Metallica, and then also Testament and Exodus and Overkill. All those bands around the early 90s got killed by grunge. So Pantera was the only band to really carry metal in through the 90s. I also say I'll say Pantera, Machine Head, and Sepultura. To me, those were the three that were carrying it through. But Pantera were the top of those.
You cite Vinnie as the benchmark.
And getting back to Vinnie specifically, I mean, when I heard Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display, it was like, okay, this is fucking great metal drumming. I already was listening to Charlie Benante and Dave Lovato, Lars Ulrich, but by the early 90s, Vinnie was kind of the next guy in line to carry the torch for the thrash or groove metal movement.
Very cool. And finally, Mike, obviously, you're someone who the word multi just applies to in so many respects: multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist, and multitasking. But you're also a very forward-thinking guy, and I know you spoke about looking to regroup and do Sons again, and you said you have the Winery Dogs. I was wondering, what's the next step for you? What's the next plan for Mike Portnoy?
Well, if you mean literally, like what's my schedule?
Well,
the
tonight,
next 6 to 12. Sons of Apollo is going to be out through the summer and the fall here in Europe. So that's that. In terms of other things, the new Metal Allegiance album comes out in September, and that was written by the core four of myself, Alex Skolnick, David Ellison, and then the founder, Mark Mengi. We got all kinds of cool guests on that, a lot of new singers that we didn't work with the first time around, so guys like John Bush and Bobby Blitz and Max Cavalera. So it's a great lineup on that. It comes out in September. We're going to do a South American tour in October. November, I think. Then there's the Neil Morse Band. We are continuing work on the new album, and we're hoping to have it out at the beginning of next year, so we'll see how that goes. That'll be the follow-up to Similitude of a Dream, which is something I was so proud of. It was really a benchmark album for me.
It should be.
And I think this next album, we got a lot to live up to, but what we got cooking so far is pretty awesome. And then we're also going to resume work on the long-awaited third Flying Colors album, which we started about a year and a half ago, but never were able to reconvene to continue just because the schedules never aligned. But Steve is finally going to become available again now that Deep Purple's starting to slow down, so we're going to get back to work on that album and get that one out as soon as we can as well.
Amazing, man. Well, listen, have a great time tonight. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and the very best of luck with everything you have planned in 2018 and beyond.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.